too scared now. So,
So I'll do a little intro. So thanks
all right,
everybody
yeah,
for
go ahead.
joining us. This is like lecture number 4 of our series on, kind of well-being and personal finance and for early career dentists. And so want to tell you a little bit about, our next speaker, good friend of mine. And I'll kind of give the little formal bio and then the informal bio afterwards before I turn it over to him. So we got Dr. Manny Valerin. He's originally from Costa Rica. He was my chief resident when I was in the Oral Medicine Residency program at CMC at Carolinas Medical Center. So he pretty much showed me the ropes, kind of mentored me, showed me what to do, what not to do, all the ins and outs. But, prior to that, he had a stint as an oral surgery intern and teaching assistant at OSU at Ohio State University, has been a popular teacher, continues teaching involving, had continued his teaching career being faculty positions over at the University of Illinois Dental School in Chicago, involvement at the GPR program at St. Francis Hospital. But also, I kind of, even though he's an oral medicine alumni, is kind of what I deem as a super general dentist. So has been in a number of different situations as an associate, as a partner, now as a sole proprietor, very successful, very well-rounded general dental practice in Peoria, Illinois. So, thanks for doing this, my friend. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for the opportunity. Dr. Napeñas had I think over like 2 decades, pleasure to call him not a colleague, but more as a friend. So proud of what you've done, man. If any of you guys haven't had the opportunity to see his first webinar, super educational. Even when I saw it, I was like, man, he just hit spot after spot of how this is supposed to happen. And I'm pretty sure he asked me to talk about this topic about knowing your worth, about associateship, contract negotiations, and private practice, because I have done all the mistakes you can ever imagine. So, and I'm pretty sure he just like, let's look at somebody who can screw it up more. And then that's the one we can need to talk about this, because I know how to dig a hole and then how to find my way out of it. So first of all, about me, I live in Peoria, Illinois, down in the middle of the state in Illinois. Love the Midwest. I've been practicing almost like 20 years. That's how long Joel and I would go back. Have a high-tech practice here in Peoria. This area is known for like technology for healthcare, and I have IV sedations. I'm also a mentor for certain doctors. And at this point, it's usually when you're on the talk and then you like survey your audience, and then you talk about like where you guys been and how like where they are, and kind of like it's funny because I feel like a lot of you guys are in the same spot I was 20 years ago when I was a very qualified, like Joel was saying, like maybe overqualified general dentist, and then trying to find no idea what to do or where to go. And as many as the struggle with knowing what's next and how to even interpret the information was given. One of the most important things for me is my family. Maybe don't know if you can see him with all the pictures of the people here and the thing, but like my wife, I have a daughter who's a special ed teacher in Florida. One by one, I moved one of my kids there so I can go on a vacation. I have a daughter with Down syndrome. She's a barista. And then the young boy that Joel saw a minute ago, he's in the fall stars at Ohio State, biology, trying to be a dentist. So we'll see how it goes for him. In regards to what we're going to talk about, I have some goals for this presentation, which is to share my experience, give you some 3 key points to find out what's worth it. And then we're going to go over that a little bit. Again, it's very important that you guys watch the video series 1 of webinars by Dr. Napeñas. That helps a lot to understand all this part. And then I want you guys to understand the different employment options. You can be an associate to be super happy. You can be a partner to be super happy, or you can be a solo owner and be super happy. Or all they apply the same. You can be miserable doing all those 3, all of them. And then trying to simplify the process so you get to see what is advantageous to do on it. But basically, you want to look at this like a long distance race, and you just have to pick out your exit. The 3 key points we're going to determine what you want to do in private practice. So what are these 3 key points that I keep talking about? Well, very simple: the family, clinical experience, and fun stuff to do in life. What are the things? Well, we all know time is money. All of them take time. I mean, and they take money too. So when you choose what kind of dental practice you want to run into, you're going to have all these factors to determine to be considered. For example, family. Some families or some is just the friends. For some is your partner. For some is your maybe even your kids. There is a point value system to see how much you give to it. It's totally up to you. There's a correlation between time spent with family and working. Plenty of relationships have been ruined because of this. People spend too much time working and then not enough time with their kids. One thing that happens here, it depends where you are in your position. Like some of us that we had little kids at one point, you want to spend more time at home. Well, the older they get, you don't need so much. So then you can focus on other things. The next thing is clinical experience. Clinical experience, you have the option to do hospital training. You can do private practice. You can do a residency training, but you can work in an old office guy dentist, and you can do high-tech practice educational places like Spear Institute. You can do the Dawson Academy, Las Vegas Institute. All these programs are also time-consuming. And I have to say, I was spoiled at CMC. It was really a total, what I call like a total nerd fest. We were probably, Joel will tell you, we were the last year, the last group that had the government put a limit on how many hours we can go to work. Before that, there was no limit. So we used to put, Joel and I, we used to put like 120 hours a week. And we will spend, my wife will bring my kids to the parking lot. I go and play with them a little bit. And then they will like, she will take them. And I was at several points in this kind of like just loving it, because I really like at that point, like my priority number one was number two, which was to like get a lot of clinical experience. I wanted to be like the best ever clinician that ever be put on the face of an earth. Another good thing that we had there were the cookies they had at CMC. We had this lady that makes fresh baked cookies. It was just awesome. Any time of the day you get fresh cookies when you want to eat it. But the best advice I ever had was from my father-in-law. At this point, already had 3 kids, a still residency, and he told me, Manny, you need to go and get a job. And as funny as it sounds, that allowed me to get to the third thing, which is fun stuff in life. Fun stuff in life is like, for me now, it's like traveling, maybe doing some like offshore fishing, maybe even like golfing in exotic places. I really love to talk about myself, so really it's not gonna be a problem, but the traveling was the main thing. Even like 2 years ago, I was able to go with my wife and we visited a glacier down in Europe. And as of late, my favorite thing to do for fun in my free time is I joined this competitive offshore yacht sailing group. So this is out of the Caribbean 600 is an offshore race in Antigua. And we went over like 11 islands. It took like 4 days. It was freaking awesome. So what it tells you is you just got to pick what your values are worth, and we'll determine how much time you want to spend in your practice, how much you want to involve in your practice. So the way this works is like an evolution of a dental practice, but it's not like teeth. It's more like this. It's more like a butterfly deal, where like you need to find your associateship first, and then you need to listen to what the contracts are. Everybody is different. They are not all the same. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the day life as an associate. Then what are the things to consider when you're buying a practice? How you're going to run a practice, and also how you're going to run a partnership or a solo ownership. Depends what you want to do. So from finding an associateship, you have the common denominators like corporate practices, where like a very, very traditional chains, the DSOs. The DSOs they have the good things and the bad things. But the main thing, that you have something available, like the ADA has a career center where you can check for openings, depends on different locations. But you're always going to have the option to go like to the old mom and pop shop, like Joel was talking about at one point, or to a more complex private corporate where you just become a clog of the wheel. I have friends that have like 5, 12 practices, and they just hire new guys and they just keep filling them up and they just run them out like through the mill. I had the option to join what my experience as an associate was. I had the option to join a very high producing practice here in Illinois, around the middle of the state, like a couple hours south of Chicago. And at that point, that practice probably was in the top 3 producing practice in the country, percentage wise. And this guy had this expression where he used to, and I still actually use it today, where he said, like, we're going on this way on the bus. Are you on the bus or you're out of the bus? What that means is, like, he had his goals, he has his plan. If you are with it, welcome aboard. If you're not, you get out of the bus. Negotiating the contract to get in there, that was another thing that you had to look before you do a contract. The thing that killed me was my covenant. I didn't know, it was one of the biggest mistakes, overlooking stuff. I was just so excited to go into private practice and start making some money. I didn't consider moving expenses. I didn't consider, like, yeah, sure, there's some tax write-offs when you move, but I didn't understand what would have meant to move my family and then have this restriction. Like, my contract was, I cannot work within 65 miles of where I was practicing. It's unheard of. So basically, I cannot work anywhere else. Well, the problem with that is I was just given some limited days to work. So I had like 3 days a week of work. So now I was stuck in a practice where I cannot go anywhere. Already moved my family, have places there to do. Actually, what I do is this talk out of my bar. So my wife may come and get some drinks as we go, but so you know what's going on. But one of the things to consider here is, how are you gonna get pay and collections based on negotiating the contract? What does this mean? Well, there's some practices that are gonna pay you based on your production. There's some practices that are gonna pay you based on their collections. But it all depends what kind of practice you have. Is it a PPO practice, is it an HMO practice, or is it a fee for service? How are the collections? For example, when I was telling you about my mistake when I moved, if I would have known that I had that issue based on commitment, I would have probably found a place to live further out. And then I would just commute until I find out this is the right location. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of little things that were not right. But for you guys, what you need to understand is, when you buy into a practice and they're gonna offer you compensation is like 30% out of production. Is that good? I don't know, it depends. They're gonna give you enough days to practice. Are they going to give you enough production to produce? Or are they going to say, oh, they're going to give you 30%, 35% out of collections? Well, if the practice is a PPO practice and the write-offs are like half of the money, and they have 80% in collections, what chances you're going to get like a quarter of your production is going to be left on the table? So you need to see what the numbers are in the practice before you even agree on how you're going to get compensated. You have to agree on how many days you're going to be getting paid for. It's really not a straight answer on what's the best way to go, but also you have to consider benefits. That's another thing I didn't consider when I did this with my family. When you're negotiating this contract, you have to see not just the covenant that I was telling you earlier and how you do this compensation for benefits, but like what is that you want to do, like how many days you're going to work, how much benefits you're gonna get. Like for example, malpractice insurance, if there's a benefit, or if you have disability insurance, or they're gonna give you paid vacation. Once you figure all this stuff, then you can make the decision, oh, this is the right place to work. Because also working environment, if you have a place that actually is very toxic, gosh, you cannot pay me enough to stay there, even if it's a good pay, but everybody like fighting against each other, or like they're like mistreating staff members. You don't want to be around that stuff. It's just toxic environments. You can actually put a cost on it of what's worth your peace of mind. And also the chances for self-improvement, like chances to travel, to get better, like for education and stuff like that. Are they providing that? Or there's something that you guys are like, have to shell out your own pocket. I myself was on a weird pay scale. I was pretty much, I will say I was below what the national average will do. And the way they kept me with this was structure where like they will incentivize how we're gonna make more money based on how much more of the practice. And at one point it became nice because there were some things that I was doing that my partner or my boss at that point couldn't do. Like I was doing IV sedations, I was doing wisdom teeth, I was doing endo, and I was doing those high-end production things that actually I was enjoying it. I was making good cash flow, like Joe was mentioned the other day. And then it became like, what's the life that I was having as an associate? Oh man, it was nice. I was making more money. I had not much to worry about. I have a nice balance. I have my kids. I have, again, cash flow was good with very little to worry about. I just show up, basically the way it refers, like you earn your wings, you work hard with very, very little responsibility. Yes, some of the associates you see over time, they kind of become entitled. They're like, like, hey, I'm making all this money, I should get compensated more. But it really all depends on what you want to do and how much risk is being taken. This situation, when I was at this stage in my life, it was great for my end, because it allowed me to have a lot of free time, a lot of traveling, a lot of time with my family, very low responsibilities. And most of the risk fell on the owner, which is a good thing at that point. I was not interested in to doing more. But then at one point became where I had to negotiate into buying the practice. And then I came into another pay scale, which now is more like at risk, that they test you or like to see how much things will cost, like share cost and like pay for my lab fees and stuff like that. And this may be something that you'd be finding interesting if your goal is to buy a practice. But if you like that balance where you don't have to do too much and responsibility is not a big deal, well, then an associateship may just be enough, and you don't have to keep going further on the career of like owning a practice. But if you want to buy a practice, how do you do this? I mean, like, where do you start? What do you need to do for this? Well, the main thing is location. You need to look for the concentration of other dentists, competition. You have to look for like kind of loan applications, have to have a practice eval. What does that mean? Well, you need to know how many active patients this practice has. How many chairs do they have? How old are the chairs? Do they even work? Do they need any renovations in technology? Basically, all the legwork that needs to be done to set it up. The cost to make it run to your expectations also is something that's going to add on to the cost. And for example, I have the option to acquire other offices. And that's kind of funny because some of these practices, they're very old and they require a lot of repairs and updates. And my financial planner was telling like, Manny, why do you want to buy this practice? Like, I want to make more money. It's pretty much what Joel was talking about his talk the other day. And like, well, man, if you want to make more money, you can always work at Home Depot on Sundays. You'll make more money. It really all depends on like how much more you want to do carrying another practice. If they're going to be just yourself, you're going to have more partners. But running a practice kind of like with a lot of parts, where like you have to look into like buying equipment, decoration. You need to look for like insurance memberships. Are you going to be like a fee for service, or are you going to be like a PPO practice? And we can talk more about this later on how that works. But you have like an absorbed amount of insurance that you have to deal with to run your practice, and then you have to worry about staffing. You need to worry about human resources, getting the right team to work in your office, and then you need to worry about the finances and business planning, which is also another thing you can spend hours on just this, because this is how you build it. Building a practice is somewhat complicated. It's really, there's so many factors on it. And one of the things you have to understand is it's not clinical. It's not that if you're a good clinician, it makes you they're going to be successful. You also have to have an emotional, personal component when involves like community involvement, where you need to make sure that you do volunteer and participate in fundraisers. And cash flow is the key. Joel also mentioned that on his talk on what is it that make up running a practice successful. Pretty much is the cash flow. What comes after having your practice, you're building it up, then you have to decide, are you going to be a solo owner, or are you going to be a partner? How does this work? Why is this important? Well, there's a lot of transition models to compare. You have the corporate old school model, where like you bring somebody in, teaching the ropes, and then you sell it to it. You're kind of like going into it, or you can just go to these groups like the DTG group, or other groups that is like the ADS is the dental transition groups, where like they do a practice eval, they see how much a practice costs, and then they give you a price, and you work with the bank, and then you just buy them out, shake hands, and then you just take ownership of it. Now we run into these groups like the Image and Dental Partners. They buy high-end practices where like they do a contract here, whereas they deal with they run all your human resources. They do management, money collection, marketing, all your insurance providers, education, technology, and compliance. Basically, they run all the stuff that most people don't like to do in their practices. It happens that I enjoy some of it. And then basically you become a partner of a conglomerate of high-end producing practices. Like, but to be a member of Imogen, you have to make at least like $1.5 million and then you can become a partner on it. So kind of like a Nordstrom of like corporations for dental stuff. I do believe in practice in partnerships. Even though I had one that failed, I do like the idea of, like, if you're buying a light bulb, for example, and the light bulb costs $1, which they don't cost $1 anymore, but it's just for points now, just for reference. If we're a partner, now I only pay half of it. Well, we're 50-50 partners. So it means, like, for every light bulb that we ever have to buy, I keep 50 cents in my pocket. So over time, that keeps adding up for cost of how you distribute cost. One of the things that failed in my relationship was we did not have, my relationship with my partner, is we didn't have an exit strategy. So that goes with the bus strategy deal that I was telling you guys earlier. I had this partner that he became kind of like obsessed with money, and we started doing things that are kind of shady, and I just didn't want to be part of it. And then for 8 years, a very successful partnership. And then the last after that, there were 3 years of litigation. And I learned a lot about litigation that no dentist should know so much, the restraining orders and stuff like that. And it was a great introduction about what to do, what not to do to a partner, and how to treat staff and how to treat patients. So there's a learning to be taken from that. But also what I learned is when you go into a partnership, you also have to see what the exit strategy is. And that comes on also if you're a solo practitioner. How are you going to end up? How are you going to get off the bus that we talked earlier? Because on these contracts that you sign on, even though it sounds very favorable that you're going to share cost, it's very beneficial to think about it. But like how beneficial to save money when you're sharing the cost of things? But you need to find where you're getting into, how you can get out of it. The way they assign it now is like making for a heavy loss for both parties. So then you're trying to make it work because you don't want to lose. But I know friends that have like 5 partners, they have multiple offices, but you also need to have a way out. Sometimes corporate become the only way to get out, because if you grow so much, then you make it unsustainable to the point where, like, somebody who's coming out of school cannot afford buying you out because your practice is so big. I had a friend from a Canadian doctor. We were in one of the CEREC seminars, and he was mentioning how he has 5 partners, 18 dental chairs in his practice, and they're like $15 million in production. Good for you, buddy. He works 6 days a week. Like, none of that what he was saying I like, because I don't like to work that much anyway. 3.5 is good for me. And he was saying how much his practice was valued. Like, oh, my practice is worth like $15 million. And then me being a smart ass, because I kind of like win the battle of being a smart ass, like, oh, great for you, buddy. How are you gonna sell it? There's no way you can sell 50 million. Nobody can afford that coming out of school. So basically you're stuck that you have to sell to the corporate model. So I don't have too many bad things to say about the corporate model, because it's a need. It serves a service to how we run practice nowadays. It really depends on what you want to do with your practice. Like I was telling you earlier, I had the opportunity to buy other practices, but for me it was not sustainable because I cannot afford to put a cone beam, a CEREC machine, a milling machine, a 3D printer in every single one of them. Without backing up. So maybe when I get an associate, they have the same amount of goals, and then you can spread it out, is feasible. But right now, do I want to work more days? Probably not. The way that we get what we got right now, I'm super excited because peace of mind, and that is be achieved by cash flow. Once you get to that level, and it really takes a while to get to that practice to get to that level, it just runs. And that's where we are right now. The summary of the goals for what we're talking today was make sure that you guys consider those 3 key points to make sure you know what's worth to do, what to expect on different options. I mean, it's not for everybody. Some people don't like to be owners. It's a lot of work. It's very rewarding because you dictate what you want to do. I like it some. I would probably like to have a partner at one point again to enjoy sharing similar objectives. Now that I know how my son that he wants to go into dental school, I don't know, that'll be another 10 years down the road. I don't even know if I'm going to be around. But if for you guys, it all depends on what do you want to do, what do you want to do with your time, what's important, what those values are important for you guys, how do you want to spend them. There's nothing wrong to being an associate and staying an associate forever. There's nothing wrong with that. As there's nothing wrong with finding the right partnership and then belong to a big group. But once you find the value in those three things, when you know what to do, then you don't have to worry. I want to leave you guys with this saying of Ms. Edward Demick. He was in charge of rebuilding Japan after World War II. He has this say was like, that is not enough to do your best, but you must know what to do and then do your best. That comes with like, you have to do your research. It's hard to say when they say, hey, Manny, I have this contract and my lawyer looked at it, and like, yeah, lawyers don't know about dental stuff. It's very specific field where you have to understand what it is. So look for your older mentors. I'm here for ValerinDental.com. You can reach out. You guys ever have a contract you got me, help you look over to see what kind of deal you guys are getting. But at the beginning, it's become more like that. You have to like earn your wings. That you have to like build up your speed. It's hard to expect to somebody who comes out of school, even after doing a GPR or an advanced program training, to come into a practice that is so fine-tuned that I can run like 5-6 rooms and expect that somebody can just come in and just do that just like that. It's not possible. So basically you have to work your way into it. But once you get to that point, this when you decide what you want to do with your time, what's valuable for you. So there's plenty of tools to get you there. Organizations that help you get there. I don't have all the answers, but I'm pretty sure I can help finding them for you guys. There's groups like a Spear that has like a practice management groups. I mean, you can like trying to go all in, but you need to have an idea what your goal and what the end result of your practice, what is it that you want to do for a practice. And that's where the three values are important to see where do you find yourself that you want to do for the future, and then you can decide where you want to stay if you want to do private practice. Very rewarding. I mean, I'm super happy. Patients at this point, it took a while to get to this point, but now I have to the point where like if somebody doesn't like something I say, I don't have to take care of them because I have actually patients that actually want to be seen, and I don't have to question. It's awesome. Like nobody questions what you tell them because they know that you're just looking for what's best for them. They say, okay, doc, let's take care of it. Whatever needs to be done. So some of the money parts of it, it's not even an issue. They just move on. I was very blessed with the practice that I bought here in Peoria. The guy who had it, he had it from his dad for 40 years. Practice for 40 years and gave it to his son. Son practiced for like 30-some years. So this practice has been here for a long time. To the point there's patients that have been here that tell me, son, I've been here longer as a patient longer than you've been alive. And some of these old timers that I have, they always mention how the doctors before actually got to a point that they're not even taking new patients. They treat it like a boutique. And that was kind of nice because even my financial planner complains, is like, Manny, you don't do enough deep scalings and root planing or perio. Is like, well, my patient population, they actually brush their teeth. So I have actually a good patient base. Hope this gave you a little idea of what it is. Share with my experience of like even getting to the point where I'll tell you about like those 3 years of litigation, kind of like basically drain all my funds. I was at one point had nothing. That was back in 2014. And after 2 years of solo ownership, I pretty much got to the same level I was 8 years when I was a partner. And then after that is just exponentially just keep getting better and better. So once you have the tools to take care of what needs to be done, and you guys are on the right track because you're all trying to improve yourselves, not just be the basic cookie cutter, you guys are going to be successful. Just have the eye on the goal, and then it should be fine. Joe, you have something else?
No, I think that's a great starting point. Appreciate the wisdom. Oh,
you don't mute yourself.
Hold on a second. Okay, can you hear me now? No, I think that's a great, I think a lot of good real world advice. I think this is a great opportunity I think, Dr. Valerin is, he offered, he's available to answer questions, also to reach out to him after the fact. I think you got his contact info. Do you have an email address, or that's probably just the best way to, to kind of pose the questions? But I think this is, let's take the opportunity. We got, 22 folks on here. This is your chance to ask questions, because I think, Dr. Valerin's had experiences in all three stages, looking for a job as an associate, having been a partner. So, please feel free to raise your hand. I think there is the option to raise your hand. If not, just, type a question in the chat. I'll read them out to you. Or, if you're even more less shy, feel free to unmute yourself. I do have some questions. And then, if you want to speak, go ahead and type your name in the chat. So, first of all, let's start with the point of being an associate. You talked about looking for a good environment. And a lot of it has to do with how the type of dentistry that's practiced, or how, how the staff is, and how the interaction of the staff is, or how the owner, treats the staff. How are you really able to gauge that, if you're looking for a job as an associate? Yeah, are owners able, open to having you spend days with them to see how it really is? Because they're obviously going to show you their best foot, put on their best face.
Not all of them. It depends if you're doing, if you're buying, or if you're going to be an associate.
Let's start as being an associate.
If you're being an associate, the way is if you plan to do like, hey, let's go all for lunch, to meet and greet lunch. So the way I find out this works good is because when you take the group as a group to a special setting out of the dental office, that you can see how they interact. If they have little groups or not, who sits with who, if they talk, or if somebody makes faces, everybody complains about that. So you can see a little bit of the drama, if there's any drama in there, or if they all get along, it's going to be a good time. That's a good way to gauge if what the working environment is. It's very easy to not see those things when you are in it, because you're so nervous to meeting new people. Make sure you fit in. But basically, is you need to talk to the staff members to see how it is, how people get along. It just be blunt about it, like, hey, do you guys have everybody? How's the working environment here? A lot of the things that I found when I was doing my shopping around about where to go was that I didn't see those little key factors. And even when I was finding my those 3 years of litigation, I had the option to look at the practices, and that's how I ended up here in Peoria. But I looked at over 80 practices all through those years that I was gonna move to, and I was able to see a lot of dynamics, working dynamics on, and then you get good at like body language and how the doctors are, how they treat their staff. Even if you want to shadow for like a day or so that practice, that's another good advice, just to see how it runs. But before becoming an associate, you need to look at the numbers. And that's kind of hard because most owners, they're not going to share some of that information, but you want to make sure that you understand if you're educated enough to understand, hey, I want to see what kind of practice it is, how much discounts you give, your fee for service, how your collections, how many volume of patients do you have? Do you even have enough volume to have you there? When I was an associate, there's times that and that they didn't have enough patients for me to do anything. I was just sitting down doing nothing for hours of the days. So all those little things is like little good questions to ask before you even walk in there. But the good working environment is basically you only test that outside of the work to see if it's existing or not.
So somehow, you just want to structure it such that your interview or your meeting with that owner would involve some sort of shadowing, or sort of like kind of like a working visit, working interview,
right,
where you actually really get to immerse yourself into the practice, as opposed to them just putting you in a situation where it's just such a controlled environment. Yeah. Would it be appropriate to ask, the owner the numbers if you are an associate? Because, like how,
I think it's, for me being an owner, if I have somebody who wants to come and look at it, nothing you have to see just the numbers, like you can just look percentages. Like, it's a PPO practice or is it an HMO practice? How many Medicaid do you see in this practice? How many is insurance driven? How many is cash patients? Those are fair questions to see. And then how many active patients do you have? And basically those are questions that you can ask to see how they can sustain you being there. The worst thing you can do, we're talking earlier about time is money. The worst thing you can do is just sit down there and do nothing because you're not going to get paid doing nothing. Some practices is set up where the associate will just get paid a fixed salary until they start making some production, and then after they can sustain their own production, then they can go into that pay scale. Sure, that's a good idea, but if they don't have enough volume for the patient to sustain, that's not the way to go. I was talking to you, Joel, earlier about Debbie, how she set me up with Kane Waters and Associates. That's a firm from Dallas, and they kind of like look for that kind of those factors, but actually doctors that are ready. It's hard to find because you can look at on, you can do the classified, like, hey, dentists looking dentists, where you can the associate needed for this practice. Well, how much of a patient volume you're going to be able to see? That's part important. And how your compensation is going to be given, that's also important. So that's something that you just don't want to sit down like, oh yeah, I'm here for work. Like, well, how are you going to get paid? What are the benefits to working there? All those are like for questions to ask, because not just the toxic working environment, but you need to make sure that you're going to get paid for what you do. You can be also in the best place to work, but if you're not making money, you're not going to stay there because cost of living is too much there. Same thing goes with location. A lot of new grads, they want to go to the big cities. Sure, why not? I answered the same question, Manny, why don't you work in Florida? Like, I don't want to work there. If I live in a place that is too nice, I probably will not be going to work. Doctor is out today. So that's the good thing. I live in the Midwest. The weather here is not that good most of the year. So that has nothing else to do but to go to work. But you can always travel. So basically for a private practitioner, solo practitioner, to take good care of people, you need at least 3,000 patients on your own. Past 3,000 people, you're gonna need an associate, or there's a little benchmark. Like in our state, you can only see not just numbers. One hygienist can take care of like 750 patients. So if you have a practice that says, oh, we have 1,300 patients, but we only have one hygienist, you know that's shady. There's something wrong. Or vice versa. Somebody says like, oh, we have 2 hygienists, but we only have 1,000 patients. Like, well, that's not right. Somebody's not working well, or there's some numbers that don't add up. So the average number that you want to look into is like 3,000 patients. That's what a solo dentist can take care on his own as a general dentist. And 750 patients per hygienist. That's kind of like a blunt number. Another statistic, if you look at the alphabet on their logs, but the letter B, they usually does give a good estimate of how many patients they have in the practice. I don't know how that works, but my account showed me, and it does apply. But basically, you want to look at the numbers before you sign anything. Before you even decide to move anywhere, you need to make sure, because there's a cost associated with that. Moving, it is hard to do and costs money. And if you're going to move your family and all that involves to move family somewhere, kids and whatever, and you don't have a set structure, how you're going to get paid and why not. Even myself, I have a goal. My goal was be an associate, buy into the partnership, be a partner, get rid of the old guy, be a solo owner. I had a goal. And the way I saw it, it was like, oh, I'm just going to do whatever needs to be done to get to my goal. Well, after 10 years, the guy, when I bought in this idea, conceptual, we initially agree on 5-year deal, and then he's going to step down. But then the market collapsed in 2009. And then the 5-year was not good for my body. And then he decided he's not going to retire. Well, that screwed up my plan too, because I had a plan. And that's where we end up. everything turned out well, even though I lost everything. I had zero money in the bank, February 2014. Really had nothing. And April Fool's Day, it's kind of like settled and everything went back to like normal. But that's how I end up in this great situation now. Everything happens for a reason. You like don't have to get too specific on it, but happy that everything happened because those are experiences that you cherish, and then you learn from it. So it's kind of like you cannot pay for that kind of knowledge anywhere else.
Yeah, there's nothing more greater education is experience, and
Right.
and failures are just like another, really is really more of an opportunity to learn invaluable lessons. So
Right, and let you enjoy your victories even more too.
Absolutely.
They taste better. Yeah.
So Dr. Riggert, I think you got your hands up. So thanks for raising your hand. Everybody else, please either raise your hand or put a question. So floor is yours, Dr. Riggert.
Haley has a question.
I see hers also.
Well, mine goes in line with what you're talking about right now, because I'm quite curious, looking back on things, did you have any red flags with that partner? And I should say, I'm sorry that you went through that, but like you've mentioned, I do think
it's too nice. Thanks.
I do think, all the success stories I've come across have definitely gone through hard times, but not all the people with hard times become success stories. So I think cheers to you for having that resilience, the perseverance, and making a learning opportunity, a success story out of such a situation. But again, given that look back, hindsight, did you have red flags, or are there red flags that you recommend?
Yes.
How to go about
that's part of like, well, the problem I had, remember, was mentioning the covenant. That kind of like set me up because I could not just take off, because I already moved my family to this small town, and I had my restriction of 60 some miles. So even if I want to work extra to make ends meet, I would have to like travel like hours to make sure that I can get out of that covenant before, because if you break the covenant, then you have fees and stuff like that associated with that. So red flags, yes, that guy was a little different, has some social miscues, some I'll say something within the spectrum of that you see like, yeah, this is not normal. But at one point I just wanted to like chuck it, like 5-year plan. Remember, like it was a 5 years come, another year, and then he'll be stepping down. So there's so many things that I was like, I saw that they were not right, but I was like, I'm gonna put up with this because I know there's an end to it. Well, then there was no end to it. Hindsight, sure, everything is better in hindsight. Would have done it different? Well, there's like what Joel was mentioned. There's the value of the experience, and I think if I would not have those harder times, I will not be as humble. There's another say I learned. There's two kind of people in the world. There's those that are humble and those that are about to get humble. I was probably not one of the nicest persons. I was probably too full myself, and I kind of like learned to like humble down. Like like you have to like learn to like put things, not to get too Christian, but like for me it was very hard being I know I'm a good clinician, and I know I'm not dumb, and I know I can do good for myself. And for me, it was hard to not be able to be there to provide for my family. And it was a learning to make sure to let go on some things. And I cannot complain now. It made me a better person. It made me a better clinician, a more caring provider. So there's so many good things that came out of it that you cannot just chuckle on that. Now, would I wish that on my kids? No. I wish they can just learn from my experience and listening that there's some guys out there that are like not too nice. And I hear a lot of bad stories of associates that they get messed up, and also see stories of associates that take advantage of the old timers, because it goes both ways. There's some people that are just not nice. And if you look for like the perfect fit, guys, it's like finding a boyfriend, girlfriend, or a wife, or a husband. It is really, sometimes you just take a gamble. And then see what happens. But that's why they have the associateship. You have to look at like the courting year, like the courting year, like boyfriend girlfriend years, and then when you do the partnerships, when you get married. And even if you do everything by the book and everything look fine, people can change. I think the ones that are already well established groups that have like 4 partners already, they kind of have some things figured out. One mistake was when I came in, that guy was not ready to step down. It's kind of like that simple. He was not ready to start sharing stuff. So it's kind of like a mental part where like I feel like I probably would have been more successful if I would have been in a practice already, a multiple doctor practice, and you just come into it and they already have the system figured out, rather than somebody who has to actually learn how to let go on things, because he was not good at it. I do myself believe in partnerships. Kind of weird because I'm a solo now, but it's because I'm just waiting for the right partner. So it's really not something that I worry about it too much, but I want to make sure that as many people as I can tell my story, so they know that there's more out there, that is not all bad, and that you still have good goals. You can make the best for yourself. You have the advantage that you're all young. I was young and hungry, and all you have to do is put your head down and do what you got to do to get for your goals. Those 3-point values: family, how much of a professional you want to do, how much time you want to put into it. It takes time. And also what you want to do for fun. It's not just all work. You have to actually do other stuff too. Diversify yourself. But those are my 3 main important things to value things in life, to what to do, because at the end of the road, we're all going to retire at one point, and we just need to find how to get out of the bus at one point. And right now you guys are trying to get in the bus, which is great. Don't get me wrong, it's an awesome ride. The ride is awesome. I love it. I mean, I'm like, I have a microscope, and that's how I do everything in dentistry now. I do all my restorative dentist surgeries. I do all through a microscope. Super fancy. I love that thing. That'll be one of my harder things to do because it's a super cool toy. But look for practices that like to do what you like to do. If you're used to have practice that have CT scan, and then you go to the guy who doesn't even they have to develop the x-ray in the tank, well, that's probably not the practice for you. And you don't want to invest in that practice because you have to put so much money to get it started. So startups are very hard. Joel and I, we have some friends that from the residency, and actually that's the very cool thing I have about CNC. All the guys, when we were together all those years, every single dentist that came out of that group, they're like super successful clinicians, like absurd compared with the average. Even the guys that started on their own, like Ben had nothing. He started from 0 patients. He just put his shingles out, really opened the door, and they figured it out. And now he's doing awesome.
Yes,
So
Dr.
even the
Ben
guys that
Sumlin.
started from 0, yeah, he is phenomenal. Super great story as well. George Betancourt, he's from North Carolina too. Another great successful colleague that was in that residency program is so everybody. Hodges, Susan, also, like, I mean, I'm very impressed. I thought at one point, like, damn, I'm kicking ass, out of my residency program, and I kept everybody else kicking ass. It's really like kind of cool, because we all did very well at the end of the road. Now what Joel is helping us out figure out, to all of us, even I'm already working on it, is how do you step down? It's great. It's a great race, and that's what I was telling you earlier. You need to find your exit. You don't want to get a burnout. You don't want to be a total like 80-year-old still trying to make ends meet, like tightening wires and stuff, trying to make it happen. You have to have a strategy how to get out, even if it's not for your own health, for your family health, because nobody wants a cranky old doctor taking care of them. The guy above my practice, he was super cool dude, but man, he had like Parkinson's. He can barely see. Like, at one point, you let go, man. I don't want it to go like that for me. I really, if I can, if Joel tells me what to do now that we're like doing landlord stuff, I'm out. No, it's just only if I hit the lottery. It's not true. I really like what I do. I really enjoy what I do. I cannot wait to go back to work. I love my staff. I have a great staff. Makes my life happy. I play music, like good music, dance music in my office. We're like, sometimes I'm working with a patient. It's like, I'm sorry, I have to stop. I love this jam, and then I have to go and dance for a little bit and then come back and finish whatever I'm doing. So really, it depends on what you want to do in your practice. How do you want to run it? How much fun you want to have with it? I'll say, heck with it, have fun, like be loud and powerful. Why not?
And the thing I really admire about you is, work's not work. Work is fun. It's not, you got to make it fun. But on top of that, though, I know you and your wife, you guys know how to run a tight ship. It's it's like you take what you do seriously, but you don't take yourself seriously, you know? And you take serving, you know, you take the craft seriously, you take serving the patients seriously. But you know, we want to have fun.
Talking to how involved in the community. You guys need to give back. And it's not just what you do for free stuff. Like I have a couple cases I do for like to help, but it's more like how involved you get, like fundraisers, like Boys and Girls Club, the Children's Hospital. I do a lot with like St. Jude Hospital. This is one of the things Peoria is known for. This is one of the biggest donators for the St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis. And we have our own mini Memphis hospital here, the Children's Hospital here. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to get involved because you have a skill, which is also how to talk to people, how to communicate. And then you can use that to be bored. So like in my previous town, I was a police commissioner. I was like, I feel like Batman. They call, commissioner, we need this stuff. And I was like to hire the police and the fire department, and I'm doing the tests and stuff. So it's a service, it's a job, but you have to service your community. That's part of like one of the things that is very important to get involved. Just don't be one that just shows up, does the job and leaves to your house. You have to actually get involved. That's how you get your name out. That's how people know how they respect you. They come to you because they want you. The best advertisement there is word of mouth. And it comes from having a good reputation, and you have to keep a good name. Mine is like, I like to have fun, so they didn't make sure I watch it, but I kind of stay within the boundaries of what it is that I can get away with. But just be mindful of looking all those little clues of what is it that the working environment you're going to be involved. How people get treated is kind of, for me, the big one. When I had my bad experience, my partner, he was not very nice. Very toxic working environment. So in my practice now, my wife and I, we don't tolerate that. We is strict, like, it's a good time, you're on the bus or you're out of the bus. If you're causing trouble, you're causing too much drama, you're off the bus. So that's how we run it. It works great. Very happy with what we have going on right now. Good reputation, good colleagues to work with. I'm away from the drama. I went to, because I come from out of town. Most of the people in this area came from Southern Illinois University. So there's so much drama, like, oh, this guy used to hang out with this guy, and this guy used to, like, they dated this person. Like, I'm like from all out of town. Like, that's why I live in a different country, because before I grew up, so I don't have no drama following me from that.
Isn't that where you're from, Dr. Rigert?
That's where I went to dental school. We're full of drama. In Southern Illinois, our school, my class was a graduate of 46, and I always said it was too small. They had to drum up drama just in order to entertain themselves. But there's nothing to do. Right. It's great to go to school and dental school down there because there's nothing else to do. But you can become to get to know the community. Just kind of go shovel people's driveways, right? Say a friendly hello. I'm actually, this is the first year I'm letting my Illinois dental license lapse. And I'm like holding on to it. It lapses in September, and it will be the first time I'm going to go without it. So it's sad. This is Augustana. If you,
it's a sad moment. Oh, there you go. Look at you. That's nice.
So we got another question, and you know, I know what your answer is going to be, Dr. Valerin, but it's from Dr. Vatcher, one of our CMC residents, GPR, moving on to oral medicine. But have you ever hired an associate with more training, such as an AGD or GPR? And the next question would be, how do you feel they compare to dentists without extra training, and would you compensate them more for their experiences?
Yes, and yes. So would I ever hire somebody? Sure, I will hire somebody who's adequate. But if I have apples to apples, if I have somebody who has extra training versus somebody who does not have extra training, of course, I'm going to pick the one that's better prepared. So that's kind of like an easy one. Do they need to get compensated more? Sure. But remember, the compensation equation depends on where you're going to work. Sure, if you come work for me, it's going to be awesome, but I cannot hire everybody. But in regards of how it has to be based on production. Is it based on collections? Is the practice an HMO? Is it a PPO practice? Is it a fee for service? How much they collect? How many new patients you're going to be able to see? How many days of work you're going to get? All that has to be ironed out. So it's not so much how you're going to get compensated. It's like how much access to compensation you're going to get. Because if they tell you, oh yeah, you're gonna get paid in collections, but they have horrible people collecting, or they can not collect the money, well, then you're not gonna get paid. So it doesn't matter if they're gonna say, oh, you're gonna get paid more, but you don't get the money. So look at the other things. But the correct answer to that is yes, by all means, you should hire somebody who has better training, because you don't want somebody treating your patients that is not the best qualified person. So I'm pretty sure there's some cheap guys out there that will go just for the cheap, because that's how they practice. Like I don't do that. Oh, another good one. Look what kind of brand of implants they will use, because there's some cheap implants out there. If somebody uses cheap implants in their practice, well, chances are there's a cheap ass. You don't want to work with that guy. Why is that? Well, because there's like fun expenses. There's some things you don't need to buy. You can get by with cheap stuff, but if you find the brand, I don't know, like buy Motrin or ibuprofen. Do I buy Motrin? Yeah, I like Motrin. Is that different? No, it's no different. It's the same product, but I buy Motrin because I like Motrin. I'm just old school like that. Same thing applies for dental stuff. The supplies. You can look at the drawer about supplies or what they use to see what kind of quality products they use. And that's a good way to see what kind of practice they run. If they use cheap stuff, chances are they're cheapo. You don't want to work there. Even they offer the world for payment, because that's how they get by their overhead. It makes no sense to work in the practice. You guys are gonna be more specialized in training. So you're gonna run it like I did, which you're gonna run it as you're like a specialist. So your overhead is, you should strive to use an overhead as a specialist overhead, not a general dentist overhead, because you have more training. So you should be able to utilize your tools better than what a general dentist can do. So by default, you're going to be better than the owner. Then that's going to give you more leeway on it. But you need to look at those key points that they were saying on, like, what do you look for? Well, that's another way to see. But look at their drawers to see what they have. They do have electric hand pieces, or they have air-driven hand pieces. Well, electric is better. If they don't have electric hand pieces, oh, then there's something else that's going to cost you more money to start adding on to your practice. So all those little things adds up at the end, and it gives you perspective of where do you want to be. Don't go cheapo. The lights have LED. I have my drill to do wisdom teeth. My handpiece to do wisdom teeth is a cable, and it has an LED light on it. If my light burns or my micro doesn't work, the drill has its own light that is LED. So like all those little things, it does help. Because if you start cheaping out on something, even the burrs that you use, even the burrs, oh my God, if that kind of stuff, it tells you what it is. Even the brand of the stuff of the burrs that you use, because you can buy a lot of cheap stuff, and it just makes you more work. In dentistry, the cheap stuff usually doesn't pay off. It's going to cost you more money because you have to redo stuff, affects your speed. So even little things like that will give you a little telltale of what's going on there.
It's almost like on the front end, you got to know exactly what's the good stuff and what's the cheap stuff, you know, when you're scoping out these practices.
Right. And that's where, like, knowing an old timer, like having Joel in your art, because Joel is so much older than I am, then you can give advice, like, what do you think? And then ask questions, and don't sign until you have something concrete that you know, like, what's the benefit of it. I will by all means never hire just a kid out of school without advanced training. So just to answer that question, I will not do that. Have I done it? Yeah, when I was in my other practices, yeah, we look at that stuff. And we have, when I was a partner, we have associates. But now that I'm on my own, yes, I will not hire somebody who does not have extra training, because it kind of goes against everything I do. You actually have to excel to do a little bit better than the guy next door.
And so following that, you know, you mentioned associates, you know, trying to align goals, and you know, what are the, now I guess we're speaking strictly for you, you know, what are the characteristics that, you know, what sort of goals do you think, you know, you would be looking for in an associate?
Well, it depends on where you are. If I depends what I want. If I have a good practice where all I want is somebody to fill the time so I can go on vacation, or if I'm looking for somebody who wants to grow the practice with me and then is interested into buying into it, or somebody who wants to buy into it and then wants to buy more practices, and then we go into business and buy multiple practices. So it really all depends on what kind of person you're dealing with and what you want to do. If you want to make it better, don't come down being like the underdog. Come down like what is it you want, how hungry you are. Even if you see this a potential, like somebody comes like, hey Manny, what do you think we just go in and then we start buying more practices, and then you have to work here and there, and then that's how we figure out if you're that good. Sure, why not? But if you just want to, like, don't be a dormant dog, be an aggressive dog. Go and be aggressive on what you want to get. So he said, like, what is it that I want from this person? Well, it depends on what the person wants, and that's how you're gonna push him. If I have somebody who's just gonna be a filler and doesn't care for learning more technology, I mean, it really is all a personality thing. Some people are comfortable doing the minimum, and that may fill the void for, like, if I just want to go out on vacation more often so I can go sailing more, then that'll be the perfect fit. But if somebody who's more aggressive and wants to grow the practice, I'm like, oh yeah, let's get at it. So it really all depends on where they are, what they want to do. I hope that answered that one. That was a very cool question. I don't think there's a bad answer for that one either.
Well, let's take it to another level. So we're talking about, because sometimes you're looking to get an associate that potentially could be a partner. So then
right.
what would be the right characteristics you're looking for in a partner?
Okay, but confident. Make sure confident. You have to be somebody who knows what they're doing. If you're confident in what you do, it's gonna make you successful.
That's confident in business or clinical business?
No,
what would it be? Clinical confidence.
Clinical, because the business part is teachable. If they like what they see, so for example, in my practice, if they like what they see, which I don't see why there's not to like, but all I need is somebody who's comfortable doing dentistry, and hopefully they like second molars, because the one thing I'll do as soon as I get my partner, I'm not gonna do second molars. I'm done with second molars. I'm not gonna do root canal second molars, crown second molars. I'm done with second molars. Make sure they like second molars, on a joke, but confident in their work. Sure, there's room for always learning. I cannot hire. I mean, I remember the first time I was doing an endo in private practice. I used the system where you have like the system B, where you have like the heating instrument to cut the cone on it. 5 times I put the hot instrument to cut it, and the whole thing came out. Put another one, cut it, came out. I'm like, oh my god! Even the patient was laughing. I was like, what's wrong with you guy? You can't even do it. It was an anterior tooth, which is super easy. So being comfortable with what you do, I think is the main asset that you can have, because that will transfer into what the other staff members will see on you, and then they will believe on you. If you don't believe in yourself, it's going to be very hard for you to be successful. So the main thing is you have to believe in yourself first, and that's where that you have to be sure what you do and how you do it.
And I think a lot of it is just getting most of the folks that are here, getting that extra training, or just getting those reps.
Right. Oh, 100%. Right.
So
at speed, I mean, like, you get so much faster. Gosh, like I remember when we were at CMC, it was just phenomenal. Like all the things you get exposed. One thing when I came from Ohio, I remember Joel, I used to do a lot of sedations back then. And when I got to North Carolina, I remember Dr. Brennan saying, Manny, you cannot put everybody to sleep. I was like, what? Why not? And like, it's not legal here. And then he was like, you need to talk to people. And I'm like, what? I don't know if I like to talk to people. And I realized I like talking to people. And if Dr. Brennan would have not told me that, I would still be a jerk, that if you talk too much, I would just put you to sleep and just do whatever needs to be done. And thanks to him, I learned, like, you know what? I like talking to people. I get to know what they do and build relationships and stuff like that. So all that came out for like what he taught me, kind of like, don't tell him that I said that, but he big influence on my career on what I needed to do and how do I practice them day to day. Every time I look under the microscope, I remember him saying like, "Oh, I don't want to see what I'm doing," because I remember like, "Doc, you don't want to use loops?" Like, "No, I don't want to see what my dentistry looks like." So every time I look under a microscope, it looks like 100 times bigger. Like, I wonder what Dr. Brennan will say about this.
And it's funny, you know, you
But,
haven't gone from oral surgery training to oral medicine training, two opposite things. You know, oral medicine, we got to learn how to talk to folks. That's all we do is talk to folks, you know.
Right.
Whereas oral surgery is just
Right,
kind of in and
right.
out, you know, do your thing. So
Gets caught, and you're done. Yeah. So
Yep.
the talking part, it was a very good thing. It helped me in for my practice growth. It helped 100 times. Like, doctors with personality are way more successful than if you're just blah. And I attribute a lot of that to my confidence and how I can talk people into boredom, and then they kind of like that stuff, and then I get to know about what they do. But I need a lot of help. Like, my staff writes on their charts, and they give me a heads up. Hey, this is the patient that like to do fly planes. So when I walk in there, hey, do you see that fly, the World War II plane that crashed on that Cocoa Beach? And then it kind of like, you kind of like build those relationships with the patient. But if the staff doesn't help me, I probably will miss half of those connections. So you have to have good staff to help you do that stuff for that.
So you talked about mistreatment of associates and associates mistreating owners. What are kind of the biggest examples of those?
I will say, well, one of the things that I had issues when I bought my practice was one of the hygienists was concerned that she was not being compensated from the sale of the practice because she felt like she was entitled to some ownership on it. So she started talking bad about the previous owner. When you're in practice, you also see your hygienist as a provider. They're not just an employee, they're providers too. They're a big, at least clinically, they have to be like 35, 33% of your production of what comes with the hygienist in private practice. So being a provider, you want to make sure that they are on the same page, that they make sure that they do perform what they need to perform. But this lady talking bad about my previous the previous owner, it was having an impact on the production because some of the patients that she was referring to, they started losing the faith on the work that was done before. So they kind of like had a connotation of distrust and whatnot. So then kind of like the production, when somebody needed something, like, well, I don't know, the other doctor said I needed it, but I don't know if it's true or not. So then they didn't want to do stuff. That's one thing. History is a story that I know about guys. Guys are just jerks, and then they mistreat the staff members, like doctors that like throw an instrument because things don't go their way, and they mistreat the assistants, or like they talk down to them. You know, we're like all human beings. You know, we all have a chance to like have bad days. I totally understand that part, but you cannot be disrespectful to somebody. And like, not to sound too, because I have two daughters, but like I do have a hard time when people talk down to women myself because I have daughters. And I don't do well with that. It's kind of disrespect. About God, the same thing goes with owners. Owners that they feel like they're omnipotent, that they're like super good, or they mistreat employees, or they mistreat. I know about partners, a group here, that the one partner messing around with one of the hygienists, and then got a hygienist pregnant, and his wife pregnant all in the same year. And like this stuff, there's just, you cannot do, because it really has so much repercussions on how, like, what happens after. Not just how you talk down to people, but personality wise, like how productive that is. So you have to have a good working environment is more productive, and that's kind of like the main thing. You don't want to waste time, or because time is money, and if you're wasting time into like not being productive, it costs you more money.
So what about
money,
go ahead.
Go.
So
no,
like,
go ahead.
Now you also mentioned about associates mistreating owners. So like what are examples of that?
When they take advantage of them. So for example, I know another guy that he was building a practice. He didn't have a covenant. So he was building a practice like really like 2 blocks from where the other practice where he was working was. And he was just poaching all the patients from it because the guy didn't have, the owner didn't have a restricted covenant for this guy. So he took a good chunk of the patient base. Now, being as egocentric as I am, I'll say, screw it. If you guys want to leave, freaking leave. I don't care. But it really, that has a cost associated with that. Now, is that the right thing to do? I think as we're professionals and then you treat everybody with respect, that should not be an issue. But it's people like, there's people that are not nice in general. Like, you'll remember that from your school. Not all your classmates were nice people. There's some guys that were jerks. I remember how even back in when I was in residency, you remember the Johnson brothers. One Johnson was very nice and the other one was not too nice to staff. It's just kind of like personality wise how you treat people. So you just want to make sure you stay away from that stuff. Stay away from the drama. It really is non-productive whatsoever. In either end, you don't want to put up with that. And everything comes, what goes around comes around. As an aside joke, so I'm Catholic, and then I went to my priest and I asked him, hey, how did this karma thing works? Because this guy is being a jerk and I cannot get over it. How like everything keeps happening well for him, and I still have to work hard, but like this karma thing is not understanding. And like my priest was like, Manny, karma is a Hindu belief. We're Catholics, we believe in justice. So I do believe on that too. I do believe that you're a jerk. At one point you have it coming back at you. At one point, it's just a matter of the time. So trying to keep a clean nose, you know, if you do good work, if you're honest, they have nothing to worry about. You'll be successful. But where you want to go next, it depends on what those that was mentioned earlier, what those values are. What do you want to do? And keep an eye for all those little things, like what's going to give you that right place to work. I mean, the ADA has that career center. They actually has a mentor program for old-timer dentists that want to transition and bring an associate. Actually, the ADA also has a mentor program where you can bring in an associate. So you can look if you can become an associate for that mentor program through the ADA, and then get dragged into a practice if you want to buy into a practice. But that's the thing you want to know. Do you want to buy a practice? Do you want to own a practice? Or do you just want to be an associate? It all really is very relative. You can make a good living just making a hole and putting a filling on it without doing any other practice, high-end skill thing. You can make a good living just doing fillings. Making a hole, putting a filling, good living. It's easy stuff, easy money. I mean, I think a 3-surface filling right now is like $350. I mean, just do that and you'll be fine. Because how many can you do in an hour? Gosh, like, I don't like to do that, so let's not talk about it. But in regards of what you can do to make a good living, is really the sky's the limit about what you want to do with that. But use those tools. I like the ADA. They're stepping up on trying to help the new guys coming up to get stuff. Looking at the resources that they have are there to be utilized. The classified ads are really not that good because you don't know what you're getting. I think the Aspen Dental and the Heartland Dental and all those are just part of somebody has to do that. You serving as a group of the community, there's nothing wrong with learning how to have speed, learning how to run an office. There's chances for I've seen some success stories going that way. That some guys bought into that, and then they buy the practice that they were working on, and then they become partners on corporate. They're like that. That's not my thing, but I've seen guys that are successful doing that. Is that a bad thing? No, it really is just what fancy you, like what do you like about it? Like, what do you want to do with your career, your values? I was mentioned earlier. What do you want to do? It all depends on what you want to do. Does it fit your life plan at that particular moment? Key, have an exit strategy because things may change. Like talking to Joel earlier, when you have little kids, it's totally different than when your kids are grown up. It's totally different. Your time values are changing, and then you can do maybe more fun stuff rather than the little kid stuff. Do I miss going to the functions, the Christmas functions? No, I'm fine. Not doing that anymore. Were they cool? Yeah, they were cute back then. Do I want to do more? Like, no. Somebody has that. Oh, good. I'll see you later. We can have a drink when you're done with that. But I don't do that anymore. So those things are kind of cool. The main thing is, like, you guys need to find out where is it that your values are. Find a location that you may like be interested on, and then having that in mind, then you can start looking around and you use the resources that are available. There are companies that help you with transitions. I put a couple names there of them, but basically just dental transition practices. ADAs has a bunch of them, but there's actually people seeking right now prospect clients to buy into practices, just as there are people trying to sell their practice in the web. It's there. But before you sign anything is when you need to see the fine print, see the practice appraised. What do they have their value? How much is it going to cost you to bring it up to technology? Most of the guys that are selling their practice, they've been practicing for 20, 30 years. And the last time they remodeled their office was 20, 30 years ago. So you run into equipment that may not even work. And they're like, oh, I have 5 chairs. And then you look at the chairs like, dude, this is like falling apart. Because part of the office that I've been looking. Like, oh, look, I have this digital X-ray. Like, this is a phosphate plates, buddy. This is not a digital. Digital for me is you just wirelessly put it in the computer, and then you're on the software. Not that I have to still go on transfer the scan. For me, a big one for me, electric handpieces versus air-driven. Air-driven is cheap and loud. Electric is powerful stuff. If you have not invested in your office to have electric torque handpieces, I wouldn't want to be in that office. It's stuff like that.
So I think a lot of great points, and a lot of little pearls, looking for, things to look for in terms of materials and equipment and things like that. We got a question from our entering dentist. First of all, this is from Adriana, another CMC student. First of all, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. As someone who's very early in her career, this is all great insight. If you could go back in time to your early dental school days and give yourself advice, what would it be?
Oh, that's deep. I will not, no regrets. That's the cool thing about it. I have no regret. I mean, even the bumps on the road, like Joel said earlier, there's something to be learned from it. How can I be where I'm at right now if I would not have those bumps? I'm super happy. I mean, I do feel like as of today that it's a success story. I don't think I would have changed anything. I wish I would have met my wife earlier, but that's kind of weird because she's younger. But that's about it. I don't think I would change anything. She's listening.
Hi, Christy. No, go ahead.
I don't think I have pay more attention to detail. I just didn't have this. I didn't have a Joel to help put together something to make you look for things. I wish that was available, but that was not an option there. Guys, when Joel and I when we were in residency, it's when they first came out with the handheld palms. Remember that, Joel? They had to like sync them, put them in a port to like get the data for the patients.
Yeah, that was technology back then. Like, having the Palm Pilots.
We were like, oh yeah, and then they put the Wi-Fi in the hospital. Like, what? You can get your information in your palm, and it's insane. So back then there's not an option to do this. You just have to learn the bumps on your own. And for me, it's hard to see. Like, I had some friends from South Carolina with Shay Scholbert. They have 15 offices, and they're 5 partners. And then when I look back, I was like, how come I didn't get? I mean, I wish I would have done. It's super cool, dude. I mean, he's techie like I am. He likes 3D printing. The problem he likes Clemson, and then I like Ohio State. So we have a lot of issues in that sense. But besides that, it was a fun group, and there's so many things that I feel like I got shortchanged because I had a bad experience. But then there's so many things that I accomplished out of my own with the help of my family that I'm not. I don't regret any of them. So can I be more, could it be more aggressive? Gosh, I mean, it doesn't get more aggressive. I was borderline jerk before I met my wife, that she calmed me down. And then all those bumps kind of like humbled me down. I mean, I don't think you can do worse than what I did on that sense. But I'm just happy now that we will be able to transfer all some of this knowledge down. Not to get too cheesy, but, and that's why I still teach, do stuff like I do, like the CEREC stuff. I like the technology, whatnot. There's this clip of the movie Lucy, the you know, have you remember that movie? The Sarah Johansson's and that Johansson, the lady from the Avengers. You know what I'm talking about? Lucy. Joel,
I'm
no?
missing that one, man. Sorry.
She's a supercomputer.
Oh yes, yes,
It's
yes, yes. Yep.
That one.
Yep.
So in the
That's
movie,
right.
she says, "What's the only thing you can do with knowledge if she's a supercomputer?" And the only thing you can do with knowledge is pass it along, because if you don't pass it along, you die with the knowledge. So not to sound too cheesy, but that's basically why I still like to like say stuff, because I think I have some stuff that is worth passing along for somebody to keep using later on, because if not, that knowledge just dies with me. So kind of like on the philosophical part of it, that's why I like to talk and stuff like that.
I got a couple more questions. You know, I know we want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's time, but what are the biggest sources of conflict during exits of partnerships?
Money. It has to be the money.
It's always money.
Yep. It's always money. There's the reason why partnerships don't work is because there's a problem with the money structure.
So what's the best way to mitigate that on the front end? You know, you said you got to think of a good exit strategy. You know, it's kind of like, you know, getting married and having a prenup, you know, ahead of time. So what do you need to lay out ahead of time? You know, but you know, everybody thinks they're going to get into a partnership and it's forever, but you always got to think about, you know, what's the worst case scenario. So what are certain things you got to lay out?
Well, there are two points for that. One is find the exit, then how to avoid to get there. So there's two things you need to know for that one. It's cheaper to how to avoid to get there. The way the exit happens is if you make it financially very painful for both parties. So then both parties do not want to dissolve it. That's the first thing that you can do. Thank you. How do you avoid that? Well, like a relationship, like a marriage relationship, you have to have stuff that you need to do in common. You have to invest time in your partner. Same thing will happen with your associates. You need to go out with your associate. You need to have a life besides work with your associates. You need to do other stuff. You need to grow that relationship. It's a relationship where if you don't take care of it, like if you don't attend to it, it will not grow. If it doesn't grow, then it's gonna get stagnant, and then eventually will die. Just like I'm not to get too agricultural, but it's kind of like it's just like that. You have to take care of it. You have to like cherish. You have to like make sure you understand what the needs of the other ones are, and do things that I'm just gonna do fun stuff together. That's how like finding my solution would be that just do some stuff, and then you grow that relationship. Then it makes it easier to like move on. Like team building pretty much comes down to that. You have to have a team where you work on it and you do activities together. And that's something like on a smaller level, that's what I do in my office. We do cookouts, and then we take them out of restaurants, like trying to do like a once a month. With COVID, it's a little bit different, but before that, I took all my staff to Disney in January of 20. Before COVID, it was March. In January of that year, we went to Disney. Took all the girls to Disney. Some of them have never been on it. So you have
the
to
shopping
do stuff
spree
to
you
build
guys
that
did.
relationship.
Yeah, that was the shopping
cool
spree. Yeah,
I think shopping spree we did. That's like $100. They give them. We made a game. We gave them I think $150, and they have like 10 minutes to spend it. And 1 hour. I'm sorry, Chris. My wife is correcting me. They had 1 hour, and they had to They had to bring the receipts. If they didn't spend the money, they had to give the money back. And they can only spend it on themselves. They cannot buy stuff for anybody else in their family. That's just for them. And it was a very cool game. And then we went to a shopping strip mall, and then they were like running between stores to the point that some of the workers at the stores, they knew what they were doing. and then they help them out to like do checkout faster so they can go to another store. So that's kind of like a very nice, and it helped us to get the name out, because people are like, oh, where you guys from? And then actually happened that they were all wearing their scrubs with their logo on it. So it's kind of like help for like free advertisement. So I'll say Costa's, well, like $1,500, and then we have like good advertisement over like 300 people that they saw all that stuff happening. So that's pretty cool.
Looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So basically, how do you prevent your partnership to dissolve? Is you have to work on it. You have, like any relationship, you have to work. Some are easier than others. Some people are easier. There's some of my colleagues, specialists that I work with. They have. It's nice to talk to them. I totally would have been fine working with them in a bigger setting, but once you're set up into like your own ways and how you want to practice, it's kind of like hard to get out of that. So I think for me, it will be more old school. We're gonna bring a new guy and teach him the ropes, and then just passing along the baton. That's my goal now at this point. I'm not into buying 5 practices now. I look into that, but it's just so much more work. And then I'm in this good stage where like, do I want to do all that extra work? And the answer is no. I don't want to work 6 days a week. Right now, just fine what I'm doing. I'm busy as it is, barely keeping up with all the stuff that's going on, working 4 days, well, 3.5. But I don't want to do more than what is happening right now.
So I think last question I'm going to ask, unless anybody else has anything to type, what is your biggest source of your success? You know, it's almost like essentially you started over 5 years ago. You know, what was the secret sauce to success?
I think it was experience. I was, like you said, like super qualified from all the training, so I was confident. I knew I can do it, wherever I went, I would be fine. I have that question all the time I ask, is I'm not, because I was born and raised in a different country. It's like, oh, you came to America, so you want to be a successful, rich doctor. And like, no, I could have gone to Australia or anywhere in the world and would have done the same thing, because it's more like how driven you are. So I know I'm driven enough that I will be just fine. That was not a concern. I just, when my partnership was getting dissolved, it was more, I just needed out. I just need to like release the crack and just let it go. Just take the brakes off, the chains. I just want to go. I'm just ready to go and start over. And I just didn't know I was going to be that successful. Fair enough. I didn't know that. But I think it's a lot of just, if you believe in yourself, you get in the tools because you have the confidence. I mean, like, not to keep harping on what I've learned at CMC, but that gave me so much confidence. Like, gosh, we were doing stuff. I was talking to Joel the other day, yesterday, how we used to get away with stuff that now it's illegal to do. Like, we used to go do cases in the OR when like there's not even attending, like the attending, like, you're okay, you can do it. That's not even legal now. We work for like hours and hours, like 100 hours, and that's freaking awesome. They don't really do that anymore because they said like, oh, you're too tired. Like, oh, that's when you do better work. So I know that there's so many things that I learned that make me such a better clinician. How comfortable is doing any procedures, from like grafting to endo to like the sedation part. I mean, there's so many things that we were doing that I'm so comfortable that I was not worried about that part per se, that all I have to worry about is like put my face out there. People get to know me. And the way you do that, like I was saying, the secret is you get involved in the community. The more you get involved in the community, the people, they get to see your face, they get to see your name. Your name gets around, tossed around. And I mean, I have the sheriff of town, the city mayor. I mean, I have a lot of good heavy hitters. That one of the main sisters for the hospital system here, which, by the way, they do have a very good dental insurance coverage. There's so many high hitters that you get that then the word just keeps passing along. And then that's how you build a successful practice, is basically on who do you treat, how you treat. The ones that I have problems with are if you do, depends on what patient population you want to address. But that's why you have to do your community service to help to give back. You cannot just get focused like, oh, I'm just gonna do high-end dentistry. Oh, you're gonna do high-end people. It does not work like that. You have to give back at one point. And how you get involved in your community and what you do with that is like what makes a difference, because people know that you're not just there like to take advantage or just to make money, that you have some interest. I just make fun when people say like, oh man, I'm paying for your Range Rover doing this. Like, oh no, man, that's paid for. You're paying for the boat. And then like stuff like that. So like you can like chill out with the patients and try to like calm them down. But like I really enjoy what I do. Part of it because I know I'm good. I know that I can do whatever I want, but now I choose what I want to do. I'm not gonna do a second molar endo anymore. 4 canal, second molar, people barely open. Can I do it? Yes. I really need to like you to do a procedure like that anymore, because now I'm not hungry for that. But if I like you, a 50-year-old that needs to wisdom teeth out impacted, can I do it? Yes. Do I want to do it? No. Why not? Well, it's harder. I like to do an 18-year-old wisdom teeth impacted. 50-year-old, is it worth it? My time, the money? I could be doing something else. Send it to the oral surgeon. But if I really like you, really ask me, Manny, please, can you do it? Like, fine, I'll do it. But that's the cool thing. At one point, you get in your career where you can do what you want to do, not what you have to do. At the very beginning, when you're an associate, you have to do what you have to do. You just got to do it. There's no question about it. You just have to do what they ask you to do. You have to earn your wings, like I said, build up your speed, get confident. And the only way to do that is doing more. All of you guys doing this extra training, kudos to you guys. You're doing the right thing. Just by definition, you're going to be better than any of your colleagues, even by next year. Even if you account for like the income loss for not being in private practice, for how much faster you're going to get, that's going to offset the cost of even how much you're going to get paid. When I was talking about like when I was an associate and I was living the life, is because I discovered the sweet spot where I was making enough, that I was making, that was working, that was making enough cash flow without the responsibility of it. That's a good spot to be. There's nothing wrong with that. Could I stay there longer? Sure. Why not? It was very sweet deal. Then when you want to become an owner, that's when things get limited on like what you want to do. Like there were days that I wanted to go and see my kids' basketball game, but I couldn't because I had to go work. Because now you're responsible for part of the partnership. So then there's some things that you have to like, what's important. At that point, I had to work. I had no choice. So do I want to, would I change that? Yeah, I say probably I would have, now that I know more, I probably would have started my own sooner. Going back to that question earlier, what I've done different, I probably would have pulled off a Ben Stelnam. Ben kind of like he was like balls out. He didn't care. He's like, I'm just gonna open my own office and I don't care. I don't have to buy anybody. But again, I didn't have the speed or the I didn't have the speed then. The speed came being an associate, and then it just takes from there, because you have to make sure you can sustain the volume of the practice that needs to be seen. That's the main thing, and it's really just a developed skill. You're not just born with that. You have to learn that. How do you do that? How do you multitask? How do you assign that? I like that. I like that part of the job too.
So I think the great thing is just kind of increasing your repertoire and confidence, being an extra training, and then just getting the reps, getting out there. So anyways, Manny, I mean, you and I, we can always talk. We can talk for hours and drink and talk for hours. But any part, last thing, what's the best way any of these folks can get a hold of you?
Well, this Valerin now, you can go to the website. There's a phone number there, but if not, it's drvalerin@gmail.com. Anytime, even if you guys later on, right now you don't have anything to talk about, but later on it's like, hey, this guy talked that he can look at contracts and help me out. By all means, I'll help you guys out. It's really, I wish I had that. I didn't have that on my people helping me out to do stuff. A lot of stuff, it was just us figuring it out when we were there, another bump. And fine print, if I would have read the fine print better, I would have seen all those red flags that I had that question earlier on. Like, do you see any red flags? Yeah, like the way the contract was written, it was different than most contracts are done. And that should have been a big red flag that I should have considered, like, nah, this is not the right deal. This is not probably the best way to go about this. But again, I was so desperate to like, start getting to work and making some money. I remember the first time I complained about something that was not right. The way my the owner at that point, he's like, "Hey, Manny, you know what? You're doing so good. Here, I give you a check for $5,000." And I remember, what? I never seen a check for $5,000 in my life before. So when that showed my wife, is like, "Look, I got $5,000." Like, hey, do you guys talk about how unfair is the hours that you're working? Like, look, I have a check for $5,000. So like, there's so many ways that you can get abused that I think I experienced a lot of them. That now it's just funny to laugh about it, but like you can see the freaking red flags all over. Like it was ridiculous actually that people say like, was Manny an idiot that he didn't do anything earlier? Well, I was stuck. When you move, I bought a house where by the so it's not really like I could have rented and just moved to another town. I bought a house, and kids were going to school, and so I was really stuck for a while until I figured out what else needed to be done. So hindsight, it's always good, but experience-wise, I wouldn't change it. It made me a better person by all means. And then you realize who your friends are. That's another thing that came out of it. But overall, I would not change a thing. It's super good. It's a good life. Super happy now.
Well, you know,
I'm actually amazed my wife kept me along, but that's the only thing I'm amazed.
Privileged to call you a friend and a colleague, and still think about all those late nights you mentoring me while we were up rounding and on patients and admitting patients. So up at CMC. So anyways, thank you so much for doing this. We'll talk soon. Thank you for everybody who stuck with us. We'll make the recordings available. You make a great point, Dr. Valerin, about being stuck, and perhaps that probably leads us to the next topic next month, where I'll kind of talk about the lifestyle of a dentist, and how it is possible to be stuck, and how it's not possible, how you can avoid that. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you, Dr. Valerin, and we will call it an evening, and enjoy your month and enjoy your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Thank you.
See you, Joel. Take care, bro.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. We'll talk soon. We'll do this again soon.